Welcome back to Season 3 of The Sago Show. Here on The Sago Show, we dig into the stories behind Filipino food. And on this season, I'm cooking up 5 new dishes that all use coconut in a different way. Today, we're starting off with adobong tofu with coconut milk. First, I'm going to take my regular package, I think it's 19 ounces, of firm tofu. And I've already drained the water, but we're going to need to press it for about 15 minutes to get all of that excess water out. If you're like me, you've probably found a lot of creative ways to press your tofu, but this is the best way that I've done it, where I use one of my really heavy cast iron lids on top of the tofu and just leave it there for 15 minutes. Also, don't throw away this tofu container. We're going to actually need that later. And after 15 minutes, I can remove all of this water from the tofu. Next, I'm going to cut it into slices. It doesn't really matter how you cut your tofu, but I really like to slice them into 1/2 inch rectangles and then slice each of those rectangles into 2 triangles. However, you can cut them into cubes or whatever makes you happy. Now we're gonna get that tofu container back out, make sure you didn't recycle it yet, and we're gonna put the tofu slices back into the container, and we're actually gonna use this to marinate the tofu. I'm trying my best to space them apart ever so slightly so that the marinade is going to be able to slide in between the pieces. Next, in a measuring cup, I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of soy sauce and 1/3 of a cup of vinegar. And this gets poured directly into the tofu container. I really love this method because I don't have to worry about getting an extra Ziploc bag out or using a big tray that's going to take up a lot of space. It all fits right in this container. And I let these marinate for just an hour and then reserve that excess marinade and remove the tofu pieces. You can see that from the color that these have all marinated pretty evenly. And now I'm just going to be tossing each piece in cornstarch. I use about 1 cup of cornstarch for this amount of tofu. And what I'm going to be doing is just tossing the tofu slice in cornstarch and coat each side about 2 to 3 times. I hadn't really had coconut milk adobo growing up, but it is one of the many different regional variations of adobo in the Philippines. In Bicolano cuisine, coconut milk is present in a lot of dishes, and so it's no surprise that Bicol and southern Luzon are where a lot of coconut trees are grown. Coconut trees actually cover more than 1/6 of the land in the Philippines. In Bicol and in Mindanao especially, these regions provide ideal microclimates for coconut trees to grow. The presence of volcanoes provides a really mineral-rich soil for coconut trees, and they've been found to be the most abundant in volcanic and loamy soil. On top of that, sea salt is a great fertilizer for coconut trees. So it follows that coconut trees are typically growing in volcanic soil at low altitudes in the Philippines. And as I coat the tofu pieces, I am placing them on a piece of parchment paper that I will later spray with canola oil, but you should probably do it before. And then putting these in the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for a total of 20 minutes. But we're gonna flip the pieces of tofu halfway in between. Next, we're going to move on to the sauce, and to start the sauce, I'm going to need to finely chop 1/2 of a head of garlic, or about 7 to 8 cloves. Or you can use a garlic press, whatever you prefer. Now I'm going to take my large non-stick pan and add a little bit of oil and saute the garlic over medium-low heat. I probably had the garlic on too high of heat here. As you can see, it starts to get a little bit brown, but that's okay. And then we're gonna add a couple of bay leaves. Next, we're gonna add back in that reserved tofu marinade. And I've also added another 1/3 of a cup of soy sauce here. And then lastly, we'll add 1/3 of a cup of vinegar. We're not gonna mix this for at least 10 minutes to let some of the vinegar cook off, and that reduces the acidity of the dish. And I also am going to add some cracked pepper. Optionally, you can add 1/4 cup of brown sugar here if you want your adobo to be a little bit sweet. Alright, so you might already know that the Philippines is a top global producer of coconuts. But one of the reasons for that goes back, of course, to Spanish colonization, when the Spanish government decided that the native people of the Philippines were required to plant coconut trees. After 10 minutes simmering over medium heat, you'll add 1 can of coconut milk and stir until it reaches a really velvety texture. The 2 main reasons for this being, first, to increase food production, and secondly, to benefit Spain's trade, of course. Fast forward now to today, where the majority of coconut farms are run by small farmers, and over 60% of coconut farmers are living in poverty. I can't help but think that that's really imperialism at work. That even though colonization is technically over, we have farmers spending their whole lives harvesting the resources of their land so that a can of coconut water or coconut milk can end up on our shelves at Whole Foods. So on this 3rd season of the Sago Show, we're going to celebrate the coconut as a mainstay in Filipino cuisine, but we're also going to take a look at the coconut farming industry, its challenges, and everything that it takes for coconut products to end up on our grocery store shelves. Back to my dish, I'm going to spoon the sauce over my baked tofu, and then top with some sesame seeds and green onion. I really love this recipe because it is so easy and I love the velvety texture of the sauce. I also love that it's an alternative to adobo with meat and that you can still get the same flavors of adobo even with tofu. And so to wrap it up, this is the first of 5 episodes all about coconuts in Filipino cuisine and the coconut farming industry in the Philippines. Till next week, make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can stay plugged in with the next episode of The Sago Show. My name is Rachel. Salamat!